Hello, Remnants. Thank you for joining me on another episode here at Remnant Rising. I'm your host, Selena Blackston. Good morning, Remnants Rising in this hour. I am your host, Selena Blackston. Thank you for joining me on another podcast of Remnant Rising. So today I'm going to share with you guys a vision dream that I had about 11 years ago. So back in 2012, I gave y'all the back end of how I got out of corporate America, and the Lord called me into my um, entrepreneur journey. And so, so we're getting ready to go into Memorial Day, right? It's exciting. I just think the timing of this word is going to be so awesome. So I'm so glad you joined me on this week's podcast. So I wanted to share something that happened to me about in 2012. Um, it was something that changed my life, absolutely changed my life. And I was just really using this to speak to those around me. I was using this vision dream that I had to really reevaluate everything that I was doing in my life at the time. So I had a dream that I was in downtown where I live, and I was walking down the street, and all of a sudden I saw these army men everywhere, and it was two types of men, right? And these different um, army gear, and one side, one of the guys had like black army gear. The other one had um, it was more like the traditional, the typical um, camouflage that you would see, right? And so they were speaking different languages, and I didn't understand what they were saying, but I saw that they were gathering all these people and placing them in under the buildings, because here we have like basements where I live. So there was a lot of basements that were open, and they were putting people down in these basements, right? And so I was walking down, and I was really just afraid. I was like, what is going on? I was just like, it was kind of like I was floating right through across the railroad tracks and into this downtown area where I live. And I was seeing all this going on, and it was like an invasion of our town. And so one of the men grabbed me and was like, get down in there. He was like pointing. He was talking a different language, and he was like, get down in there and under the basement. And I was like, well, I gotta go get my children. That's the first thing I said. I was like, I gotta get my kids. I gotta get my grandpa. And so, and then I ended up standing there at the corner because they were speaking another language, and they went back. And the next thing I know, as I'm waiting, my grandfather comes with the children, and we're all together. And so this is a little scary that we were all gonna be down in this um, basement. And when we got in there, there were a lot of people crying. There were a lot of people singing to the Lord. And what they had was, it was like stacked boxes. There were black boxes that were stacked on top, and inside the boxes were people. And I know that sounds so scary, but they were stacked up on, it's so hard for me to even talk about this because it takes me back. And the Lord's been dealing with me on sharing this for so long, doing a podcast about it, because it was the one thing that actually woke me up. It shook me. This dream, it was like a real dream, like a vision that I felt like I was actually in. And so it shook me. It shook me, right, when I woke up from this dream. But as we were, going in underneath the basement, I was seeing stacks of boxes, right? And so the men put me and my children in a box, and my grandfather was in another box, and we were all stacked on each other. And so as I was holding my children in this dream, I was just praying to the Lord, and I heard people singing hymns underneath me. I heard babies crying. I just heard pastors were preaching, and they kept saying the word over and over and over again. And I was, just comforting my children. And I remember my son in the dream, he was saying, "What's going to happen, Mom?" And I was just rubbing his head, and it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It was like a movie, right? This dream was like a movie. And the next thing I know, I woke up from the dream. Um, and so that dream changed my life because it was a clip, right? It was a clip. It was a vision of the future. And the Lord revealed to me, that the Chinese, that the Russians would be invading the land. He didn't give me a time. He didn't give me a place. He didn't give me, it was just like a snippet, right, of what was to come. And so I literally was shook. I went to work. I remember I went to work the next day, and I was telling my boss about this dream, and I was like visibly shaking. And she was like, God is really waking people up right now. And this was 10 years ago, okay? It was like so many of us Christians knew what were coming down the pipeline. And so that dream alone was the first step that I took to that God opened up my visions, right? He opened up I started researching, I started looking because I had like no interest in international affairs or anything like that. So I began to watch China, I began to watch Russia, I began to watch other countries, and I began to connect the things. And as time went on, the Lord kept revealing dreams and visions, and I have so many stories of things that he showed me. This was the first thing that literally shook me, that I knew that I needed to change my life. I knew right then and there that I needed to do what God was calling me to do, what he called me to do, right? Using my gifts, using my talents, all for his kingdom, and not working in the world systems, but working for the kingdom systems, right? So that was the dream that woke me up. Now, when I began to research, I had found the information on the camps that they were making these boxes for. And that was 10 years ago. I was already looking and seeing how they were developing these camps, right? And so there were boxes being made already for the people. It was almost like they were preparing for genocide for so long. Um, I also found that later on, as I was having these open visions and dreams, I had another dream about being bused into these camps. And so it was like school buses, and people were they were being tricked into going in on these buses to go into these camps. And I remember in the dream that my children and I were getting ready to get on this bus, and the people were being given like phones and cameras. They were given things, right? It was like it was like a bait to get these people to get on the bus, right? They had no idea where they were going. And I realized in the dream, I was like, oh, I don't want that. I'm not going on the bus. And I stayed behind. But these people were getting on the bus, and they were being ushered in to these camps. And so I realized that, that we were in a place of just being lied to all this time, right? Our government, and I don't want to go in way into depth about everything with the government, things like that. But I'm just simply sharing with you a testimony, a dream, a prophetic dream that I had about the future. And so I felt very led to share that dream about China and Russia invading my small little town here where I live, because I feel that, even though it was 10 years ago, I'm still watching, still looking, I'm seeing how all of this is playing out. And we always know that the word says that there will be rumors of wars, right? There will be times where people will say, "Oh, this is going to happen." I'm not going to put a date on this. I'm not going to put a stamp on this, right? But it is a sign, right? It is a sign when you see all of these things starting to come full circle. And so I hope that this is confirmation for someone today that maybe you had a vision or a dream about the world, or something that God has shared with you, opened up your eyes to see. I know that time in my life, I was living in my own bubble. I was living in a place where, I wasn't really doing the kingdom work. I was doing the world work. I was working corporate America. And so that opened up my vision to see that I had to run the race. I had to run the race. And so I'm going to elaborate that more so on that during this time, as we're seeing things fall apart around us, right? We're standing on Psalms 91 as God's people, as God's remnant people. We're seeing things falling around us, right? He is still gonna be there for us. He's still, as we have been called into this place of um, serving him and doing and prophesying and evangelizing and all these things. But I'm telling you, it doesn't matter the platform. You could have thousands and millions of viewers, you can have thousands and millions of clicks. It doesn't matter. What matters is, who are you affecting in your life around you at this time? Because I have walked these past 11 years, 10 years. I have worked behind the scenes. I have been serving in my community. I have been helping those that are getting their ministries launched, right? And pushing their messages out, believing in the message of God, right? And so when God had used me these past 11 years to move, right, do what I can do behind the scenes, right? The word says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand does, or don't let your right hand know what your left hand does, right? So it's like now I felt an urgency to share these messages, to be able to confirm for others, but also to encourage the ones that don't know that this is coming down the pipeline. This is coming down the pipeline. Jesus is coming. He is coming soon. And we are seeing all of the revelations. We are seeing the prophecies come to pass in this hour. So it is important that we all Jesus wants is to be reconciled. He wants his children to be reconciled to him. And so if you're feeling a tugging in your heart today that something has to change in your life, then maybe this is like a wake-up call for you. This is something that will help you understand where you're at. And yeah, so I hope this blessed someone today. I am really thankful that I have here the Remnant Rising podcast. I am trying out this new platform, Riverside FM. And so if you like this formatting, uh, let me know. And of course, if you would like to sign up for riverside.fm, you can click on the link below and take a look at their platform. They have some great offers there. So, all right, guys, have a blessed day, Remnant Rising. I'm looking forward to doing next week's podcast, and I hope you have a blessed day. Stay safe and stay in Jesus. Thank you for joining me on my podcast today. If you like what you heard, please subscribe. Also, don't forget, we'll be back on next Saturday.